Okay, fast housekeeping and preface. And please, conversations there. I try to make the slides worth downloading, and I welcome emails with constructive critiques or stop me in the hall. There are sections I'm going to be going through fast because the point's not Perl 6 in that slide. The point is the effect it had, and you may really, really want to know more about that slide, so really download the slides. You can try my code for yourself now or later. There's even 2 different live coding sites. My voice tends to weaken, and I want you to easily hear me, even in the back. So if I lose volume, somebody please signal me. Today I'm focusing on small pieces of Perl 6 for reasons that will come clear. If this talk is your only exposure to Perl 6, at the very end there are some recommended videos that will give you a much better overview of some way cool features that I don't have time to go into. I have a formal Q&A at a 2/3 point about 9:32, just before my last section. I will take quick questions throughout, but like single sentence questions. I am Bruce Gray, util online. I've worked over a decade in and on Perl 6. I wrote a Perl 5 to Perl 6 translator. I write lots of code for Perl 6 on Rosetta Code, the great language comparison site. And I've given talks on Perl 6 on, see what has improved, why things have changed, what things have changed, what has not changed, how Perl 6 changed me, and several other people have covered the vast array of new features. Today I'm focusing on parts of the design that have had second-order effects or emergent behavior. So that's the blurb on the website for this talk. It seems a bit disjoint from the actual title. The title of this talk does not end in a dot. It ends in dot star, which is regex for followed by anything or nothing. Could be program, as in the way Perl 6 multi-paradigm design encourages exploratory programming. You explore your problem space and evolve your actual code. Or programmer, like how the design helps with self-education. Or programming language, like how the design has emerged from its various principles and influences. Could be all of the above. Not in 45 minutes. So that's the preference. Let's start with random numbers. Excuse me. The source of many bugs and not a few war stories. I mostly am not going to explain my references, but that one's XKCD. Random numbers, it's hairy stuff, really. Do you want selection with replacement? Selection without replacement? Does your language have a rand keyword that gives you a floating point between 0 and almost 1? Or a random function where rand of 1,000 would return 1 between 1 and 1,000? Or is it between 0 and 1,000? Or is it between 0 and 999? Is it floating point? If so, should you truncate it or round it? Oh, you didn't round it, did you? Now you have a bias against your endpoints. Wasn't it obvious to truncate it? No? No, it's not. It's a lot to worry about, getting randomness right. It's no wonder some people outsource it. So in your language of choice, how would you generate a random 4-digit number? And when I ask you a question, I'm not looking for hands. I just want you to, solve it mentally in your head so you have something to compare to the next material. So take 10 seconds. So here are 2 ways to write it wrong in Perl 5. They both give you leading zeros. By the way, the answer to the question before is you can use rand by itself and it defaults to 1, or you can use rand as a function and it's between 0 and whatever, almost to whatever you said as an argument. That's the correct answer. That's not too hard to reach, but if you came across that line of code with no comments, could you tell what the intent was? Perl 6 provides a roll method on lists and ranges. It does random selection, not random number generation. So, are you more likely to know what that line intended if you saw it bare?
Only if you know it's the dice metaphor.
There's a little of that throughout here. It's like, yeah, this is better. Oh, but only if you already know Perl 6. Roll can take an argument if you're rolling multiple times. So if we're rolling up a new Dungeons & Dragons character, you do recognize these attributes, right? Lots of nods. For YouTube, I'll say it's strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma, the classics. So you're using 6-sided dice. We will loop through the attributes, printing the stats for each one. To get the stat, randomly select an element from the 6 sides 3 times and add them together. But that's old school. A kind dungeon master would take the best 3 out of 5 rolls. So you roll 5 times, sort it, descending numerically. Take the first 3 elements and add them together. Now, I grant that if you don't know Perl 6, that code is a head scratcher. But if you do know Perl 6, it is very clear. Last bit of random. You want to pick door prizes for your Perlmongers meeting. You're giving away Flux, Doctor Who, Batman, Cthulhu. I made Cthulhu part of a password once. It was a bad idea. So, in your language of choice, select 3 winners from some list of attendees. Go. I won't show you my code, but I'll tell you, I didn't code to prevent duplicates.
Oops.
Did you code to prevent duplicates?
Yeah.
Larry has. But see, we've been doing, up till now, selection with replacement. This is selection without replacement. It's a different world in probability theory. It's the difference between rolling dice and picking cards from a deck. It's not straightforward procedurally to prevent duplicates. And it's not too bad. You can just roll like before and keep re-rolling whenever you detect a duplicate until you've selected enough winners. that's more code than I want for such a simple thing that I'm doing. And I know there is a potential bug there. We'll just ignore it. An easier way would be to act like all your attendees are a deck and shuffle the deck and deal the first 3 cards. That's much better. Still Perl 5, shorter. But 0.2 to get the first 3, awkward. And I had to load a module to import shuffle. It does come with your Perl, though. Perl 6 gives you the pick method. It's like roll, but without replacement. Cards instead of dice. Now it's short enough to use in a one-liner. I actually did that at a meeting. Alice wasn't there. So, what did they do? Oh, sorry. They, for those of you who don't already know, are the language design team.
I have multiple personality disorder.
Larry Wall says he has multiple personality disorder. The design team, Larry Wall, and similar deep brains like Allison Randall, Damian Conway, we collectively call them at Larry. So what did they do? They took a look at the math and computer science field, took the feedback of many years from users and teachers and trainers, and looked at the most common use cases through a filter of pain points and common mistakes, sources of bugs. They tore off a chunk of the computer science and packaged it neatly for us. Pick and roll. So that's...
It was.
Oh, are you actually confirming that you did intend it when you picked those 2 names?
Once we saw that, we said,
Oh, sure, once you saw it, but it's not like you designed for the pun. That would be a bridge too far.
retro pun.
It's a retro pun. Okay, Larry. That's forgiven. So this is the start of the story here. The intended effect is less coding work, something that's common. Now we've got a quick, short way to do it. But the secondary effects, reduced real-world errors, slightly improved code quality because we're lowering the cognitive load on the programmer, and you have a reduced need for math and computer science training, a little bit. So the average programmer can write better code faster, a little bit. But that's just a little piece of the language. Yeah, we better speed up. Go with something easier. Regular expressions, really easy. I think all professional programmers should learn regexes eventually. If only so you can say things like, find the link to that site that started with an F and ended in .org that I put in my notes. Many Perl coders first use regexes when they need to trim white space. I want to look up at y'all a little more here. That's a fact. That is the right answer. But it is not the first step on a path to regex knowledge. It's too big a leap to be a first step on any path. That leads to a lot of cargo culting in this area. People who don't understand what they just wrote, or more likely, just copy and paste it. It was 2 statements. Why not 1 statement? This looks like a reasonable alternative, right?
No.
Larry thinks it's not reasonable. I gave this talk a week ago. People in the crowd found 2 bugs.
Yeah, they're both named plus.
But it's so simple. You start at the beginning, you skip the white space, you capture everything, you skip the white space, you end at the end, and then you replace the whole thing with what was captured. There are 4 different bugs in that statement.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes is one.
yeah.
You need an S on the end.
Yep, embedded new line. And the really subtle one is if you have multiple spaces at the end. You won't trigger on a single space, and having a space at one end but not at the other will make it not trigger. So those are the 4 errors.
Yeah, man, that's actually.
Yes.
You want the dot to match the whole.
Yeah.
It's assuming you want embedded new lines.
Yes, because if you have ABC new line 1, 2, 3, because it came in from a web form. Now, if that does happen, then it won't do what you intended. It won't recognize the embedded in with the dot, and it just won't strip any white space at all. So Regex is a very sharp scalpel, and many, many coders cut themselves. That looks reasonable too. Well, let me say it the way I would say it. Best practices /x, separate regex. That looks reasonable. Nope. Needed that /s because of that embedded new line case. It's almost best practices. Perl 6 adds 3 methods on strings. .trim leading, .trim trailing, .trim, which does both. It's simple, it's readable, it's bulletproof. And you don't have to care how the language does it behind the scenes. The other place coders encounter regex too early is substring search. That is hard to read, and the coder has to remember all the rules for special characters. If they forget to backwhack the dot in MP3, then that dot just means any character, which is not what you meant. Perl 6 adds methods starts with, ends with, and contains, and they take plain fixed strings like fgrep. The old regexes still work, but the new methods are so much cleaner. So the primary effect, it's easier to use and read. The secondary effect, you don't have to learn regexes too early in your path as a programmer, and that's important. Oh, wait, I have a note from David Adler. DHA has reviewed all my references and humor. He affirmed that it was all funny, although he did not laugh. Okay. Well, if you are using regexes, they are so much better in Perl 6. We've improved them so much they extend up into full parsing. Understandable parsing. They call this unification of regex and parsers grammars. Now, P5, best practice, named captures. Look for it in the doc. If you're not familiar with it, you should all be using it for anything longer than that much. They're great, but they don't scale. An ISO date, year, month, date, with dashes in between. If you write it like that, you've got a reusable regular expression. You can drop $ISO date in another regular expression. But if that regular expression needs 2 ISO dates, then all the captured variables clobber. You know, I can't remember if you get the first one or you get the second one, but you definitely don't get both of them, and you wanted both of them. So let's take as an example a reading log, start date, end date, and the title of the book that you were reading, with the white space separating. Like that. So we need a grammar to reflect that. And if it's good, then we can just do this. I haven't shown the grammar yet, but we've got a line of text from the log. You tell the grammar to parse the line, and if it succeeds, then in $/ you can get to the pieces that were captured. It contains, the $/ contains all the matches and submatches. That's the grammar to do it. Better than the regex that was in your head? I'm glossing over lots of syntax you don't know yet, like the code blocks to say this has to pass or fail for the month. The month has to not just be 2 digits, it has to be 2 digits that are between 1 and 12. But even if you don't understand the syntax, you can admire the very clean definition. Jeff Goff will be going into depth about Perl 6 regexes and grammars. His talk is next to next in this room at 11:10. But I need to show you the capture object. So we have in Perl 6 grammar tracer and grammar debugger. The tracer shows me the whole tree of capture objects, which work the way you treat them. It's almost magical. If I treat the start date as a string, it gives me 2010-02-28. If I treat it as a hash, I can drill down to get just the day part. Wendy has a shameless plug for a book specifically on parsing with Perl 6 regexes and grammars by Moritz. So grammars, they have object structure, they can even automatically build parse trees for you. The state of the art has truly been advanced here. So much so that Perl 6 is mostly written in Perl 6. That's not as a stunt, it's not an alternate implementation like Python's brilliant PyPy. I'm talking about the main implementation of Perl 6 is written in itself. It makes it easy to get and keep volunteers. In Perl 5, you want to hack on Perl, you go down into C. In Perl 6, you want to hack on Perl 6, you go down into Perl 6. But parsing, for me personally, is serious, deep computer science. Like, all that, to me, those aren't buzzwords. Those are trigger words. When your input matches your parser, you get a nice parse tree of your input. If it fails to match, parsers don't give you good partial info, so your compilers cannot offer good error messages. So, Perl 5, simple math, that works fine. Oh, this time I left out the asterisk. What do I get? A simple, generic syntax error. I mean, at least it points you to the point of failure, but it's less than one would hope for when you're seeking help and you're making mistakes. Now that's too simple for Perl 6. Let's do palindromes. In the first 100 numbers, how many of them are the same if you wrote them backwards? That's a one-liner in Perl 6. Now, the parens around the caret 100 are required. What if I forgot them? That is the kind of help I want when I screw up. Oh, also, that the green and red on the last line there, I didn't colorize that or add the little pointer. Perl 6 colorizes its errors. The dev team has a ticket category for error messages that need work. LTA, less than awesome. If an error message is less than awesome, someone needs to make it awesome. They take it seriously, and that benefits every user. And it's Perl's new parser that gives us enough information to do that. Floating point.
How's the speed compared to Perl 5?
Slower. The question was, how's the speed compared to Perl 5, where the parser is hard-coded in C and is rather inflexible. Perl 6's syntax, Perl 6's parser is slower, at least right now. We got good people working on it, but it enables a lot. You can modify the syntax. There are hooks there where if you want, you can make a sub-syntax lexically scoped in your program to say, use Perl 6 with SQL. And within that block, you've got SQL, not as something that gets handed off to the engine like in DBI, but something that the compiler understands. I can write that, I haven't, but I could write that as a module, and it would actually modify the Perl 6 syntax at runtime, but only in a lexical scope. But that's as much as I can say about that right now. On to floating point. I've kept my equipment out of my spill zone. So there was a famous paper written long ago of the very few simple things you needed to know to get floating point right. 44 pages. It's not so simple. On Stack Overflow, about floating point issues, they have so many questions. So tell me, in math, that's a true statement, right? So what should that print in Ruby? So what should it print? Given that syntax, and that's the, not trinary, what's it called, operator? Ternary operator. So if what's on the left of the question is true, then what's on the right of the question prints. Otherwise, what's on the right of the colon prints. So yes, it should print yes. And it says no. We've been bitten by a floating point bug. This part is from a talk by Curtis Poe, a Perl monk known as Ovid, beloved to us all. So Perl 5 has the same problem. So does Python. And Perl 6 doesn't. How? Last time I gave this talk, somebody from the audience said, a binary coded decimal, which is a good answer. But that's not. Perl 6 does it by storing 0.3 as not as a floating point number, but as two integers, top and bottom of a fraction. In Haskell, they would call that a rational type. We call them rats. And if you have oversized ones, you can have big rats. So Perl 6 does integer arithmetic, the fast kind, on top and bottom of the rats, and only converts them to floating point if the size of the top or bottom would cause performance problems. And yes, you read that method right. That is the nude method, as in numerator, denominator. Ovid gives hour-long talks on the ways this feature reduces errors and simplifies business programming. There's no more round-off problems, there's no more equality failures.
How does the speed compare with doing floating point numbers? There's computation, there's support in the CPUs for that, but there's not for this, right? So
Well, the question is, how does the speed compare? Certainly, the speed is faster with built-in floating point, but then again, the answers are wrong.
You can easily switch to floating point.
Yes, you can force floating point, and yes, it is slower, but
you don't
it's
always need all the accuracy. Sometimes you just need some of the accuracy.
yes, but for those.
You know, speed.
You don't always need all the speed. Yeah, and you don't always know, and where do you want all the people who aren't steeped in the math to default to, right? So what do they do? I mean, you got a good point. It is slower, and if you care, then you need to make it be in floating point. But this is, okay. Look, what did they do? They dug around and got an idea that actually was considered and rejected by Python. They found a real-world pivot point between behaving perfectly and performing well. And they packaged it in a way, and this is key, it's invisible to casual coders. Floating point errors vanish. We again need less need for math computer science training, which doesn't mean you have less educated coders. It means you get better code out of the coders you've got. Let me emphasize, if you say 0.3 anywhere in your program in Perl 6, it does not make that a floating point number. It makes that 3/10 internally. And if I had not told you that explicitly, you could work for a year in the language and never know it. Your program just works correctly.
Is that only constants?
No, well, no. No,
So if you have a variable value 0.3,
right. It stores it. In fact, if you ask that variable, what type are you, it says it's a rat. Okay, got it. I actually do have to speed up here. Parallel processing. I did not write examples of multi-threaded code because I lost my masochism pills. It's not actually that hard to write multi-threaded code if you don't mind getting the wrong answer. And if you don't mind debugging monstrosities. I think this captures the general feel of debugging threads. It's terribly hard to write it to be fast and correct. So very quickly, imagine that those two rows, instead of 3 elements each, they had 1,000,000 elements each. How can I write row add to return a 1,000,000 element result where the first one is 5 plus 3, the second one is 20 plus 2, so on. So we're going to start sequentially. Inside, the arrays will be called A and B. We check they're the same size. Declare a result array. Walk through the indexes as I. For each I, get the ith element of A and B and add them together. Push it onto the results at the end and return it. That's serial code. Now, when you're generating a list from a list, that's usually a map. So this is a shorter, clearer version. And I don't even need a separate result array. I just return directly. That's still serial. A range of 0 to the end of an array is, you can get it with the .keys method. So I've changed this to the OO method call form. That's still serial. By the way, that works in Perl 5 too. You can say keys on an array and it will give you 0 through the end element. Perl 6 has a zip infix meta operator. You write Z and an operator like plus, and it will zip the arrays together, adding them as it goes. So short, so clear, once you know Perl 6. Still serial. Perl 6 has hyper-meta operators. This is hyper plus, and it is in parallel. That's the version using the Unicode quotes. You can use angle brackets instead if you don't like Unicode. We do have ASCII equivalents for all the cool new Unicode operators. I removed the size check because I don't need it. We say that the quotes, the direction of, no, we say the hyper is like a magic wand, and it matters which way you point it. So when they're pointing in, I'm guaranteeing the compiler I don't need any magic on either side. Those are both the same sizes. If I pointed them in either direction, the compiler would watch for a size difference and adjust it at runtime. And that's very useful if you're scaling. So that example, if n is 3, then it'll be everything in A times 3 in parallel. The most interesting thing about this is that hyper does not instruct the compiler to multithread. They tell the compiler and they tell the reader that it is safe to multithread, that there are no side effects, there are no dependencies on order of operation. When you need to thread and it's something bigger than an operator, we do have threading methods that integrate very well with the rest of the base design, with the rest of the language, and it's part of the base design. Will Kalita will go into depth about Perl 6 concurrency. His talk is next in this room. So what do? They took the scariest part of modern coding, to me, and extracted it and repackaged it into a feature that any coder can use with ease. Questions? I have learned to give everybody a minute to get their question together. Yes, sir.
So what is the extent of the magic that these hyper meta operators will perform?
What is the extent of the magic that the hyper meta operators will perform? Well, since you asked, actually, there is another difference between zipping and using hyper. Zipping is strictly one level. Hyper will descend down into children and subchildren if you've got that kind of structure and do multiplication or whatever all the way down. So if you've got 3D matrix, then yeah, it does the whole thing potentially in parallel.
And it's smart about the shorter two lists, it will basically do APL semantics of repeating the list.
Yes, that question came up at the last time I gave the talk. What happens if the two don't match? It doesn't actually extend. It acts like it extended the list.
Is Perl 6 backward compatible with Perl 5?
Is Perl 6 backwards compatible with Perl 5? Also a question that I got. No, deliberately so. But, we've got salves for that wound. It's part of the point, Perl up through 5 has done more than any language I've ever seen to provide backwards compatibility very strongly. I mean, it's just crazy the extent that they go to, and that's valuable. But that got in the way of the evolution of the language. So the rationale was we're going to have one break. We're going to one time make a jump that we're not going to pay attention to backwards compatibility. We won't change something just for the sake of changing it. We want Perl to stay Perl and still feel Perl. We're not going to get rid of sigils. But we have this one break, and we'll use that opportunity to design something that you never have to have that break again. You look at all the ways that having rigid backwards compatibility in the old design prevented progress, and you design around that so it won't prevent progress. Perl 6 is designed to be the last Perl, so there will never be a need for Perl 7 because it, as we said about the parser, it is so very evolvable. And as I said, I wrote a translator 5 to 6. Liz gave a course in how to run Perl 5 modules in Perl 6, but you can't just plop a bunch of Perl 5 code into a Perl 6 program right now. That might come, but I don't know if anybody's working on it right now.
Well, you can use inline Perl 5 too.
Pardon?
Inline Perl 5.
Yes, inline Perl 5, but I think that that's limited to modules right now. Liz says yes. Yes, sir.
Is there a way to preserve the rational behavior once things become very large if you're not concerned about the performance?
Is there a way to preserve the rational behavior if you don't care about performance? Yes, you use big rats. Oh, I'm sorry, you use fat rat.
The only difference is that normal rat limits the denominator to 64 bits.
The only difference is normal rats limit the denominator to 64 bits. And we have a very high speed, was it greatest common denominator, so reduction algorithm, so it's just like nothing. All right, I'm going to go on to the next section. I would love to have questions later. This is after my formal Q&A because I am not qualified to answer questions on it. I barely know that concurrency, asynchrony, and parallelism are distinct concepts. And I learned everything that I know about that from reading Jonathan's slide decks. He's got some great presentations on this. And he's the primary, well, he's the driving force behind the work on this. So without getting into too much detailed code, to stress test, because I was getting a bug in something I was playing with, I wrote this insane threaded addition where, so I've got H, it's got 16 elements, I keep doubling it and doubling it and doubling it 12 times to make the array huge. I can optionally adjust it so it's not an even power of 2 because that changes the dynamics. And I pass it to my evil parallel add. And if it's wrong, if what it comes out with is different, then it yells at me. But it doesn't yell at me because it's not wrong. What is evil parallel add? It takes the first two and adds them together, spawning a thread to do it. And then it takes the next two and adds them together, spawning a thread to do it. So all these threads go into an array, which is half the size of the original. And then all those get looped, and so on and so forth. But the threads don't have to complete before the next execution, and they don't. So you could have whatever your maximum number of threads are okay to run, this will run it. But I don't have a way to see. I mean, I can see that it's supposed to be 64, but I don't have a atomic max operator. We do have atomic increment, but just by wall clock timing, I'm getting 10,000 threads a second. So that ought to be the thread overhead because this operation plus is dead simple. So that tells me that if your operation is more expensive than 1/10,000th of a second, whatever the thing is that you want to do, that as long as it doesn't have dependencies and order of operation, this ought to provide a speed up. But that's not my point. I mean, yeah, that's fun to play with. My point is, concurrency has been brought down to a point where I can learn it by exploring, by playing. It was up at a level where I would never try to do it at all without a formal class on the topic. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. So, I often end on this slide, encouraging you all to play with Perl 6. It is brilliant and it is fun. I often end on that slide, since it shows off our family daredevil, util 1.1.3. But today, my secret extra point, my fooly-cooly, you won't get it really unless you watch it back again. Yeah, Larry says, been there. My point is that the Perl 6 design is extraordinary. The Perl 6 design process produced that extraordinary design. That process gets knocked. It gets disrespected because it took over a decade to do. That actually matches the law of system delivery. We thought it was going to take 6 months to 2 years. So 12 years is actually right on target. Especially with reimagining the VM, shifting to lazy lists. I didn't even touch on lazy lists. And all volunteers. But just look at all the deliberate inputs and processes into that development and design. Part of the reason it was well thought out is because so much time was put into thinking about it. Part of the reason it was so well thought out is it had input from a lot of people that had smart things to say about it. And part of the input was everybody that's been using it because it's a well-established, well-used, heavily used language. Oops. So, of course, I think Perl 6 is great to code in. I've said it for years. Please do try it. I'll help you if you need it. But today, I assert that other languages should be stealing parts of this design. And I further assert that language designers and system designers should not dismiss the process that led to this design. The design is too good for such a dismissal. Instead, look at how to duplicate our process. Take these inputs. Take the time necessary. Just, figure out how to do it faster. That's my time. I'm thrilled to see you all. Thank you.